Dear friends, the sutta that I have chosen for reading today is called the Gotama Sutta. It's part of the Samyutta Nikaya, number 12.10, chapter 12, number 10. We have been looking into the factors of stream entry, and one of the 4 factors of stream entry is wise attention, our yoniso manasikara. I happen to have a chance to study a bit more about all of the different meanings that expression is applied to in the suttas. I can give you a wonderful link. This is called Giving Away My Secrets. So in case you thought I was trying to be, if you thought I'm very intelligent, I'm intelligent enough to look something up and then study it and reflect on it, following the leadership of wonderful Dhamma teachers. There you go. So if you either click on that link or if you search for Analayo Yoniso Manasikara, you will find a very definitive survey of the term. I'm going to be, come to find out there are actually 2 main kinds of practice of that. One is the wise attention of the Bodhisattva, who is directing his investigation towards the cause of suffering and discovering the steps of dependent origination in his quest to understand why beings in samsara are condemned to birth and rebirth and death and dukkha. I have to say, I know Richard is in the room, and this reflection on dependent origination is one that he's mentioned doing a lot and liking to do. It seems like this is the reflection of one who is going to be a Sama Sambuddha, who's going to be in a world where wisdom or the way out to the end of suffering has been forgotten, and who is capable to rediscover it. Then there's a whole other cluster of meanings of yoniso manasikara, or I could say applications that are what the Buddha taught, what the Buddha recommended. So I'm going to be speaking about some of these a little further this coming Tuesday. So in terms of understanding the impermanence of the selfless quality and the quality of being unsatisfactory in the phenomenon of samsara, the Buddha taught applying yoniso manasikara to contemplate the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness. And then elsewhere, he advised directing towards the impermanence of the 5 aggregates in order to give up being delighted and attracted. And elsewhere, he pointed to the 6 sense bases and their corresponding objects, and using this wise attention to discover especially to reflect about the impermanence of all the phenomena that can be experienced through the senses. And through that impermanence, one can become disenchanted and give up on relishing the sensory experiences, and with that become freed from attachment. So in a certain sense, these are saying like what one should pay attention to for it to be wise attention. And then in another case, in the Sabbasava Sutta, the Buddha makes the comparison between unwise attention based on speculations about the self. So what was I? What will I be? What am I? Am I something? And these speculations serve to promote the increase of greed, the increase of aversion, and the increase of confusion. And that's contrasted with directing awareness towards the Four Noble Truths, towards seeing dukkha, the arising of dukkha, the cessation of dukkha, and the way leading to the cessation of dukkha. So, in effect, this is kind of like an aspect of how one is paying attention. Paying attention in the appropriate way is developing as like a frame of reference to be looking at everything that arises to our experience in terms of the Four Noble Truths. And that skillful way of looking, or that skillful frame of reference, is associated with stream entry. It's associated with dispelling the three fetters that keep one bound on samsara, and to gaining the path. And it's from this sutta especially that yoniso manasikara is associated with gaining the stream entry. And then last of all, there's a way that the different factors, the different mental factors, the different qualities of mind can also be examined with wise attention, which is able to recognize what's skillful and what's not skillful. And then in recognizing the 5 hindrances, and in looking back to the cause, what is the cause for the arising of the 5 hindrances, or for the growth or sustaining of the 5 hindrances, and then one can unwind or denourish those causes, and then cause the hindrances to become denourished and disappear. Or if one is able to recognize the presence of the factors of awakening, one can then nourish the factors of awakening and cause them to grow and to become stabilized. So there are all these different applications of yoniso manasikara, but the one we're talking about today is what the Bodhisattva looked at. I'm going to, and before we start reading, I'm going to pause just a little bit further to summarize Analayo's article. He breaks down the meaning of yoniso and the meaning of manasikara. he gives yoniso as having three meanings. One is to something which is thorough, complete, looking to into the source, looking deeply into the source. And then a second meaning is appropriate. So he gives the story, the king gave the monks some rope material, and he noticed that when the monks' old robes became worn out, they used that cloth for mattress coverings and foot wipers and so on. And after those things become worn out, they shred the leftovers and knead them with mud to make bricks for construction. And so he's saying, well, this is very proper. It's the yoniso, the proper way of using the ropes, to keep using them and using them as they progressively deteriorate. And then the third meaning of yoniso is wise, as the verse is foolish. So if you were a chicken and you had laid an egg and were wondering how the little chick is coming along, developing inside the egg, if you pecked a hole in the egg to peek and see whether it was coming along all right, that would be ayoniso, that would be foolish. But if you wait patiently for the egg to develop and just do your job taking care of it, that will be yoniso, or wise. Then the manasikara is from the two words. Manasi is the locative case for the manas, or mind. So it's in the mind. And then karoti is to make or to do. So it's meaning to make something in the mind. This is a universal factor of the adverting attention, where mind connects with an object. So it's everywhere. And everything we experience, everything we do with the mind, we could say is very likely to either be skillful or not skillful. So it's either yoniso manasikara or ayoniso manasikara. So having said all that, we can take a look at this sutta. Oh, one more thing before I let you read the sutta. Share screen. We've published the summary of the programs that are upcoming for the remainder of this Vasa. So we're right here in the weekly programs, the Sunday program and the Tuesday program. There's going to be 3 full moon Uposatha programs, which are based on practicing for stream entry. This coming Thursday, January 25, is about the practices leading up to stream entry. And then on Sunday, February 25, will be about the arising of the Dhamma eye. And then on Monday, March 25, at the end of the retreat, will be about the character of the stream enterer. And then in the middle, there's the Magha full moon on February 25th. And then the Atami half moon 7 days after that is on Sunday, March 3rd. And on these 2 Sundays, it's almost like a day-long program. So we'll have more sessions. So if you want to have a day-long meditation, Sunday, March 3rd is celebrating the Parinibbana of Mahapajapati Gotami and 500 of her bhikkhuni disciples. And then the week earlier than that, on February 25, the Bodhisattva program, that's when Mahapajapati declared her intention to be coming to her Parinibbana. And it's also the same moon on a different year when the Buddha himself made the declaration that he was going to have his Parinibbana. The Buddha took 3 months from this moon until the following Vesak moon before coming to his Parinibbana. But Mahapajapati did it in 1 week. So these are coming up, and if you visit our website, you'll have a chance to get more details and sign up if you choose to and participate in these other extra programs that we're doing. Now I will open the sutta. In this chapter, you see not only Gotama, who was our Buddha, but also you see almost identical teaching given by the previous Buddhas of the previous eons. It's all in the same chapter, but we're going to look at our Bodhisattva. This is what he said. Mendicants, before my awakening, when I was still unawakened but intent on awakening, I thought, alas, this world has fallen into trouble. It's born, grows old, dies, passes away, and is reborn. And yet it doesn't understand how to escape from this suffering, from old age and death. Oh, when will an escape be found from this suffering, from old age and death? Already here, there's a bit of a mystery in this sutta. We read elsewhere that just shortly before the Bodhisattva has had his awakening and became the fully enlightened Buddha, he experienced the 6 knowledges. One of those knowledges was how he himself had been reborn many times. And another of his knowledges was seeing how beings are reborn in different realms according to their karma. It's very important because the teachings that we follow, the teachings of the Buddha, are all teachings that can be directly apprehended through experience. The things that the Buddha taught are not ones that are speculations based on premises that are not able to be tested against reality as it is. However, in the Buddha's own time, as well as in our time, there may be people, or a lot of people, who do not have that special knowledge of being able to see back into previous lifetimes, to have the direct experiential knowing of rebirth process. Other people are able to have that direct knowledge. The suttas seem to say that the Bodhisattva gained this direct experiential knowledge very shortly before his awakening. And yet here in this sutta, this seems to be a long time before his awakening, while he was pondering about the nature of dukkha, that he had this knowledge. So I haven't had time to discover the answer, but maybe somebody who has heard from a wise teacher about to show how it is that the Bodhisattva at this time had the direct insight into rebirth. He wasn't just thinking about a theory or thinking about something that he would have known about by inference, but he was reflecting, investigating, and giving that penetrating attention into something that he was able to know directly. So he's wondering about the escape from suffering. Then it occurred to me, when what exists is there old age and death? What is the condition for old age and death? Then, through rational application of mind, this is Bhante Sujata's translation. Bhikkhu Bodhi, I think, translated as wise attention. That's Yoniso Manasikara. Through this, I comprehended with wisdom. When rebirth exists, there's old age and death. Rebirth is a condition for old age and death. Everything that arises must pass away. Every living creature and every living thing that comes to have a life, whether it's born from a womb or born from an egg or born in some other way, if they come into existence, they must come to death. And this is a universal question that you can find that people of faith in every serious tradition all over the world have pondered the same question. Then it occurred to me, when what exists is there rebirth? And the answer is, I comprehended with wisdom, when continued existence exists, there is rebirth. What people Sujata translates as continued existence is the Pali word bhava, which is sometimes translated as becoming. And bhava is not just referring to an abstract idea that's not connected with anything, but normally it's referring to becoming into some state of existence. So one becomes a human, one becomes an animal, one becomes a deva, one becomes a being in the unfortunate plane of existence. How does continued existence, when what exists, is there continued existence? Answer: when there's grasping, there's continued existence. Grasping is the Pali word upadana, which has a double meaning. One meaning is fuel. So it's like if you got a fire with the logs or the candle wax or the oil in the oil lamp is the fuel, which enables the flame to continue burning. When the fuel runs out, the candle goes out, or the lamp goes out, or the fire goes out. And so just the same way, when grasping comes to its end, the state of existence, that becoming into a state of existence goes out. So this can especially referring to grasping in relation to identification. So if I identify as a human, or I identify as my occupation, my social class, or something else, or then I'm clinging to that identity. And it's because of clinging to that identity that I'm setting up the conditions for this bhava to happen, to become trapped into that identity through the process of rebirth. And then because of what does grasping come about? Because of craving. Craving is tanha. Craving is that instability. It also has the second meaning of thirst. And it also has a very universal quality, which can be compared to a monkey which is swinging on the vines in the jungle, and or swinging on a branch. And so as he grasps onto the next vine or the next branch, he lets go of the previous one. So this is that craving, that desire, which is always not satisfied with what is and reaching forward for the next thing. And where does the craving come from? And when what exists, there's craving. And it's a feeling. All of these things are like universal features for sentient beings, whether it should be a human, an animal, an angel, or any kind of sentient life. And this is part of the pathos of this whole insight into dependent origination, is like how universal that in samsara, all the beings who are continuing to spin around in samsara are subjected to all of the elements of this cycle. So the feeling is the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. So when there's a pleasant feeling, we want it, we go for it, we grab it. When there's an unpleasant feeling, we run away from it and try to push it away or escape from it or try to destroy it. But that's really just a different kind of a grasping. And when there's a neutral feeling, we are confused and become complacently clinging to our identity. Or you could say that we are without awareness, going through this grasping and reaching and taking and continuous moving process without even being consciously aware of what we're doing, because we're not alert enough to notice in the presence of a neutral feeling. But feeling is really, in my mind, very much like the fuel that sets off, like it's there's a flare-up of craving from that fuel. And then when what exists is their feeling. So the feeling is defined by, as comes to be when there is contact. This is getting into the deep, momentary psychology of what's going on within the mind of a sentient being. We know that in modern times that scientists have attempted objective ways of measuring this phenomenon of contact and feeling and craving, or the arising of forming intentions. There, it's definitely a real thing. So there are, for humans, there are 6 realms, domains for contact: eyes, ears, nose for smells, tongue for taste, the body for touches, and the mind for thoughts, or for ideas, the mind for ideas. And then there's a corresponding kind of external objects. So when a visible object encounters the faculty of the mind, and there is a corresponding vijnana, or knowing consciousness, the capacity for knowing that experience. Those 3 things come together. In that moment, there's a contact, and that's kind of like the match. And then the feeling is like the fuel, and the craving is like the fire. So I've jumped ahead of myself already. And when what exists is contact able to happen, and then the Buddha recognized, he analyzed the 6 sense fields for the human. And then when what exists, do these 6 sense fields come to be? And this is called a name and form. Name and form is a shorthand for an individual sentient being who possesses both the aspect of materiality and the aspect of mentality, and those 2 aspects are connected together in a person who's got a material base for having experience, including like even the mind base is depending on the material base, which is could be the brain and the nervous system is part of the material substrate, which is supporting the arising of the mental ayatana, and then the other specialized senses like the physical eye and the corresponding material equipment for that is related to a mental capacity, which is part of mentality. So again, throughout history, philosophers and thinkers have contemplated about all of these things. They've contemplated about, how is mentality related to materiality? They've contemplated, like, what is the moral significance of the way that beings experience things with the senses, and what's the purpose for all of this? What is it leading to? But in the Buddhist case, his starting point is this old age and death, the trouble of the world, being born, growing old, dying, passing away, and being reborn again. We see here the Bodhisattva's tremendous courage and persistence to just depend on whatever answers he could have inherited from the tradition, but instead from doing his own reflection, his own using the microscope, and instead of using an electromagnometer or some kind of advanced machinery that scientists have these days. The Bodhisattva just had introspection, and he had meditation to be able to look in this deeply refined, subtle, penetrating at the nature of experience, and to so then name and form is said to arise from consciousness. So consciousness is the, in this case, we could say the knowing faculty. Consciousness is a very confusing translation. We should really just say vijnana, because there are many different elements of mentality that are dissected with such tremendous accuracy and in such a helpful way by the Buddha in the early texts. And in modern times, we sort of lump a lot of that all together into just consciousness. But in this case, the consciousness and the name and form is coming particularly to the arising of a being in the sense of a baby developing in the womb and coming to birth, and how the capacity for knowing is arising, and it's associated with this mentality and materiality. And those two are given as being interdependent, so that if the consciousness disappeared, the life would come to an end. And if the name and form disappeared or was broken, the life would come to an end. So in order for life to continue and to develop in a fetus or an infant in the womb, or an infant who's just getting born, just coming to birth, these factors are both coexisting. So, and then when what exists does this consciousness come to be. And now here, the Buddha is getting very close to the condition for birth, why beings are born. When what exists, are there choices? That's a sankhara, which is the sometimes sankhara sometimes has a very general meaning as anything that's subjected to causation. So anything that is a cause for something else to come into existence is a sankhara, and everything that has arisen as a result of something preceding is a sankhara. So into this world, this conditioned, ever-changing world of samsara, the turning around of the cycle of birth and death, then everything is arising and dying and coming to be reborn because of causes and conditions. And so in that sense, it's all sankharas. There's another sense in which sankhara is used in a previous, in a different teaching, in terms of the five aggregates. It has a more specific meaning of a volitional formation or of an intention. And so in this case, if I do something with intention, then I have created a kamma. And a kamma is the cause for some subsequent fruit or the phala to come about because of that karma. So because of my intentional actions, whether they be for good or for ill, there will be subsequent experiences which can be pleasant or not pleasant. So the skillful, wholesome karmas can lead to a very pleasant life in heaven, and the unskillful and harmful karmas can result in an unpleasant life in hell. So in that way, you could say that the sankhara will be the karmic choices that happened preceding this present existence, that formed the conditions for this present existence to be. And so when what exists, or their choices, when ignorance exists, there are choices. Ignorance is avidya, and avidya means not knowing what the Bodhisattva is discovering right here. So as long as we didn't know, we continued in a blind kind of way of continuing to create karma after karma after karma, which is creating the fuel for rebirth with this natural, you could say, equipment, these faculties, these abilities that have the natural pattern of coming to contact, feeling, craving, grasping, and so forth. Then the Buddha goes on. Ignorance is the condition for choices. In this case, I suppose Bhikkhu Sujato's translation is pretty good in the sense that choices does sort of imply like a volition or an intention or something which is, you're choosing something that has a karmic result. And then he's gone like from the present suffering, going back to deep down to the cause. And then he brings it forward again. Choices are a condition for consciousness. That is how this entire mass of suffering originates. Origination, such was the vision, knowledge, wisdom, realization, and light that arose in me regarding teachings not learned before from another. And then it occurred to me, when what doesn't exist, is there no old age and death? When what ceases, do old age and death cease? And then he goes through those again. Through the yoniso manasikara, this rational application of the mind, or this wise, penetrating attention, this appropriate attention, this skillful attention, I comprehended with wisdom. When rebirth doesn't exist, there's no old age and death. What Bhante Sujato translate as rebirth is jati. In the older translations, jati is translated as birth. And you might think that whether or not one has yet gotten a hold of the idea about rebirth, at least you could see that anything that's born will come to an end because of impermanence. Everything that arises comes to its end. And then the rebirth then is putting it into a context which is okay too, that realizing that as far as us sentient beings, the this teaching is not presenting a birth from out of nothingness, but only a rebirth that happens continuously again and again, going back to the never-ending past, and the beginning of the cycle of rebirth cannot be discovered. So that's the reason for Bodhisattva translating it that way. So when birth doesn't exist, there's no old age and death. When rebirth ceases, old age and death cease. And then how could there be no rebirth? So here we are practicing for Nibbana. We know that the natural fate of an ordinary person is to go to rebirth. But we wish to cross over the stream and find the ultimate safety, to find a status where we've finished with rebirth. We've finished with having any subsequent existence, old age, and death. We come seeking the place where this is the last life, and we don't have to go through it again. So how could that be obtained? When what exists, would there be no rebirth? When this continued existence, this bhava, doesn't exist, when we're not identifying with, clinging to our perceiving any state of becoming something, or becoming somebody, or becoming in a particular realm of existence. And for that to stop, that grasping has to stop, the grasping after identity, or the grasping after whatever the next thing is. And for that grasping to stop, the craving has to stop. How can the craving stop? He's saying when feeling stops. Here, an unenlightened ordinary person might start to feel doubtful about dependent origination and kind of say, well, I'm not able to get out of feeling. I could possibly train the mind so the craving would stop. But how can feeling stop? So feeling can stop in terms of its function as being the fuel for craving and aversion. That would be my understanding of it. So instead of, when we're not reacting to feeling, we're not focusing on the diversity of feeling. And like, this feeling makes me do this, and that feeling makes me do that. But instead coming to a state where, like, all feeling is, this, in another way, all feelings are the same, they're just feelings. And I don't really have any preference anymore as between a pleasant bodily feeling or an unpleasant bodily feeling. It's just a feeling, so it doesn't need to become the fuel for that reaction of the arising of craving. And then likewise, when somebody is approaching the end of one lifetime, they may be able to experience, before coming to the end, seeing in succession the rest of these steps as they drop away and drop away and drop away, especially if one has developed mindfulness. You could see that, oh, feeling is gone and it's not coming back. When what stops, does feeling stop, contact. So one could have the experience before death, that contact stops and not arising again. Or you could have some kind of a similar experiences if you're doing immaterial meditations of going beyond being able to spend a time of meditation where feeling and contact are ceased, and the mind is in an immaterial realm without the presence of those factors. And then when you had that experience within meditation, then you know that like these factors are kind of like optional. And then the sixth sense fields, when the sixth sense fields cease, contact ceases. When name and form cease, then contact ceases. When consciousness ceases, name and form cease. When choices cease, consciousness ceases. So these are the choices, the kind of choices where one is creating more karma, the karma for rebirth in another realm. So that ceases, consciousness ceases. There's no what's called a rebirth consciousness is the consciousness that's sort of like not finished with its activity at the end of one life and is adverting towards the next moment of consciousness in another lifetime. And at the root of all of it is ignorance. When ignorance doesn't exist, there are no more choices, no more of these karmic choices, no more of these volitional formations, no more of these mental fabrications, no more of the mind fabricating a world, which is then the world that we have to live in. That whole process is gone. So when ignorance ceases, choices cease. When choices cease, consciousness ceases. That's how this entire mass of suffering ceases. Cessation. Cessation, that's nirodha. Such was the vision, knowledge, wisdom, realization, and light that arose in me regarding the teachings not learned before from another. I'd like to invite comments and questions in terms of how we practice with this teaching, which was discovered by the Sama Sambuddha, and then which leads us naturally into all of the other side of Yoniso Manasikara, the very skillful ways in which this wise attention can be used with the phenomenon that we experience in this life to make us examine everything with greater wisdom and accuracy. It makes us look at things in the skillful way. It makes us look at the right things so that we have our attention directed in a way which is conducive to this awakening, to this experiencing this cessation. So now I'll call on Richard.
Thank you, Raya. one of the classes previously, I mentioned how I use this technique of going through this, but when I do it, I focus on each one and its ideas and definitions behind it. It's not just like a recitation, right? But one may think, okay, well, that's interesting, something Richard came up with, just an interesting technique, right? Because I said that I'm trying to do samadhi meditation, and the sloth and torpor is overcoming me. So I use this as a technique. But this technique is going back to the seventh step of the path. This is mindfulness, and it falls under the sati dhamma. So I'm analyzing the dhamma, and that reinvigorates my mind, which brings me wide awake, you know, and then I transition back into going forward into samadhi. And I didn't quite explain that thoroughly last time. I sort of just mentioned it. And people, maybe they're not familiar with these things, might not realize that that was I'm going back to sati, right? To reinvigorate my mind and then get beyond the five hindrances, okay? That's one thing. Another thing is that this is something no one has to accept what I'm going to say, but you probably never heard it before, okay? So this grasping, which also means to get fuel, right? And nibbana, well, nibbana is due to the way Pali puts things together, it's really nirvana. Vana means forest. And in the ancient world, everyone went to the forest to get their fuel, to get their sticks and everything, and bring them back and light their fire and cook their food, or do their spiritual, ceremonies or whatever, or to be warm or whatever they use the fire for. So if there's no forest, there's no place to get fuel anymore, and that's why the fire goes out. So, anyways, it's just something that in my studies occurred to me one time when I was trying to see exactly what this word nibbana, what the roots are and what it means, because it's not really very carefully explained. And then it hit me because I knew, oh, grasping is fuel. And you're not, from craving, you grasp, right? So you're not going out anymore. And they always say that craving is the link where everything's broken. But that's a little bit misunderstood. Yes, that's true, but it's from the fading away of what's translated here as ignorance, avidya. As that fades away, everything downstream fades away. Now, the Buddha, when he's attained nibbana or an arahant, they still have sankhara, but they're sankhara based on vijja. In other words, the mind can still formulate ideas, and they're based on vijja, and you're conscious of those ideas, and those ideas may be some name and form, right, connected with your six senses. But the difference is, Buddha says, when hearing, I just hear. When seeing, I just see. It doesn't cause any reaction in him to want to, after contact like that, to want to crave anything. And that's why it says that it's broken at craving, because he no longer, yes, he has those experiences, but he doesn't go down craving anymore, okay? And his ideas are based on complete knowledge, of Dhamma, how the universe works, and that's why he stepped out of the cycle of samsara. But anyways, that's just the way I look at some of these things. Might be helpful to someone or not. Anyway, thank you very much.
I find that actually looking at the big picture is also helpful. And even reciting the whole thing of Avidya Pachaya, Sankhara Pachaya, Vijnana Pachaya, Nama Rupa, like that recitation and looking at the big picture. So what do we get from that? We get a kind of like a vast image of impermanence in this ever-flowing stream of conditions. So impermanence becomes really clear. And the way this whole process is impersonal process, not something that like the hero is going forth and having different adventures, but rather that just a process of nature that's going around. So the perception of anatta or non-self can become very clear. And then the full understanding of dukkha. Now, the Buddha said that dukkha should be fully understood, and to see dukkha in this kind of like this vast and cosmic kind of well, you could say a cosmology or a cycle that then in a certain way there's a way of relaxing about it. So it's like, it's not like my dukkha and why is this dukkha happening to me? And that kind of personalized view of dukkha becomes replaced by an understanding of dukkha as being this universal thing that is applying to all the sentient beings. And with that, if anything, it's the both the motivation for practice, but also a tremendous way, like the selfish heart breaks out into compassion. So in that kind of way, like if one memorizes or recites the whole thing, it's not just doing in a magical mantra, but instead looking at a big picture. I'm also not doubting that at different, especially different times in our practice, the significance, especially within our own practice, the significance of each one of these steps can open up if we have a chance to hear and learn and understand what the Buddha and what the other ancient teachers understood about the meaning of each one of those transitions, each one of those links, and to understand and contemplate and like penetrate that one link until finally you really get it. And then when you get it, you don't have to be trapped or a victim of that link anymore once you understand that link. Kolan Smita.
Hello, Venerable Aya.
Yes.
Looks like you answered some of my questions, but my main question was, it looks like the Buddha is pointing to ignorance as the root cause of suffering. So can you please elaborate on ignorance? It appears that if only I knew, then I would not suffer. But what is it that the Buddha is trying to say, if only you knew kind of thing?
Well, the special wisdom or the special knowledge that the Buddha developed can be summarized in the Four Noble Truths as the most powerful single paradigm or conceptual, or you could say like a framework for understanding what is experienced and where subsequently where the leverage points are. To my putting it in a more of a contemporary kind of a way, before I was an adult when I was, a baby or a little child. I just had the things that I wanted, or the things that I liked, the things that pleased me, or the things that upset me. And I was just reacting to those experiences, but I didn't really have any a perspective on it. And so in that case, because I was acting out of ignorance, I was just all I was doing was what's natural for an animal of this species, of the human species, to do in order to develop, to get from being a baby to being a grown-up, to get to live long enough to have their own family, and to just extend their life long enough to create the next generation. I guess that's like sort of like the natural equipment that humans get in terms of their instinct, and also in terms of like what they inherit from their culture and so forth, like that. All of that is just in the realm of ignorance, and it just has the purpose of continuing to live, and it doesn't have any standpoint to step out of it, because it doesn't see anything beyond it. But then you could say a lucky accident of nature, or for some reason that humans have the ability to go beyond our selfish self-interest, or the kind of like narrow perspective, to be able to stand apart from the sort of like ordinary existence, to reflect. I'm not saying that humans are the only animals that are able to have wisdom. Some other animals may also have, certainly be altruistic and perhaps have some kind of a wisdom, but we have that ability. And this problem of the cycle of rebirth, that's the big one. That's the big kahuna, the big problem. And when it's possible to see that there must be a way out of it, and even to directly notice, like, when this kind of compulsive craving and grasping is present, or from time to time this compulsive craving and grasping is not present, and then think that, oh well, these patterns is not necessarily the only pattern. There's something else beyond that, and then it's with that ability to step above, or to have a way of examining what we can experience from a different plane, that it's possible to discover the truth. Or if we are so lucky as to live in an aeon where there is the teaching of the Sama Sambuddha has been available and handed down to us, then we have a chance to reflect and think about the teachings that were handed down to us, and to then test those teachings against our own experience, and to discover empirically that it's possible in this lifetime to cut the dukkha in half, and then to cut it by another half, and cut it by another half, and to finally to have that possibility of having actually that full awakening, where we know that this round of rebirth is optional. It's possible to let it go. Possible for this to be the last life, to be not seeking after another one. But in brief, the standard answer that's given about avidya is not comprehending the Four Noble Truths. And so if one investigate in that direction, I think you may find your answer.
Thank you so much, Aya.
Mhm. Here comes Maureen. Maureen.
There. This is one of the things that hit me was, where on earth, what happens to a fetus that dies in utero? It's rebirth is the actual birth, isn't it, when it becomes another human being?
Mhm.
In the way they looked at like, you know, I mean, they obviously knew about pregnancy and that kind of thing, but what happens in that time from well, you know what I'm saying, yeah.
To my understanding, in the ancient times, they thought that life began at conception. And so the being that's inside the womb waiting to come out of the womb was considered as a sentient being. And they acknowledged that it's sort of, there is a kind of like a gradual process, both in the months that the baby's inside the mom, and also during the first year or several years as a child, where the mind is not complete, and that the sentience or the mental faculties are still like being assembled and put together and developing. So the moment of coming to birth, coming out of the mother was, obviously it's a big moment, but it's not the only moment. And it was the time of conception that they thought was when the life begins.
Mm.
And so then that fetus who is stillborn and is not able to complete that process would it would be very unusual for them to be fully awakened while still a fetus inside the mother. So probably they would get another chance.
Hmm.
I know that rebirth for you is not really something that is that you don't take in the traditional way.
Yeah. It's the idea that this now dead fetus carried a whole baggage of prior karma, and what's happened to that prior karma now?
Well, look, we are, if you think of the prior karma as in terms of just causation in a more generic sense, and so then there's all the causes and conditions, one after another, that led to the evolution of the human species.
Yeah.
So causing them to be born as a human, and then causing like the human species to have such a tendency towards different accidents and misfortunes happen that we don't have on so much less than 100% success with bringing babies to birth. That's also like it's a characteristic of our species that this is something that happens. And then there's the material world, and there's all of the social injustice and the different kinds of stressful or toxic kind of phenomenon that could happen to a pregnant woman, which could cause a failure of the pregnancy. And all of those things are also caused by so many conditions. It's like you've got like maybe the billions of choices by billions of different individuals over hundreds of thousands of years have come to that moment where that poor mom is subjected to such a stressful or unfortunate circumstance, which is leading to that baby not being able to come all the way to being born, and so all of those are causes which exist that relate to a lot of choices that were made by a lot of beings that brought us to that point. But then when an individual is born, what Buddhism thinks is that because of karma, that the consciousness of the person who's dying or died goes like averting or aiming in some direction and finding this womb to get into. So like there's some kind of choice that happened that person maybe has some kind of karma which is conducive to having an extremely short life. And they put themselves into a zygote, or I can see conception of a person in a situation that is coming to a short life. That's how it goes.
Okay, so the karma doesn't go away. It ends up somewhere else.
Karma has a result. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
There are I do in my modern scientific mind, I know this is not really within the realm of traditional Buddhism, but I do sometimes feel very impressed by the billions of choices by billions of different persons that contributes to the world that we happen to have right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
then feeling the potential that the choice that I make today could have an impact on subsequent events. And because of realizing how terrible and tragic samsara is, if I could get on the path and realize the way to cut off the continuous round of suffering, what a tremendous gift that would be for the world. Even, if we had some people who were wise, if we had people who had nothing in them except compassion, even if it was 1 in a million or 1 in 10,000, what a tremendous impact on the world.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be in how.
Okay. Oh, I think maybe I should stop now.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll call on John.
Hello, Aya.
Yes.
Thank you for your teachings today. I just wanted to ask a quick question about these factors. I know the word that links them together in Pali is pachaya. I've never really understood how they're linked. So how is avijja actually linked to the sankharas and vijnana and so forth? So that's basically my question. Thank you, Aya.
You're welcome. Well, it's a what John is speaking about. It's a specific condition. There's a general conditionality, which is because of this that arises. So the linkage is causation. There are different kinds of causation. One is the I'm trying to put it on the spotlight. Like a mutual interdependent causation. Then there's like a necessary causation. Then there may be like several different factors that are all supporting causes for one kind of event. And this sequence, this pattern of dependent origination is a pattern that's developed for the particular purpose of throwing light on the suffering of the round of samsara, how it operates. And then when that round of samsara stops operating, how it stops operating. If you had the full wisdom into the Four Noble Truths, and now we're completely out of the pattern of craving for continued existence, of clinging to any kind of identification, which is going to be subsequently setting up the conditions for a rebirth to happen in some other particular realm of existence, taking on a new identity. When all of that is broken, as a result of giving up that ignorance, that delusion, then the sankharas, or the volitional formations, are not happening in the sense of not the creation of karma, which is karma for another birth, or karma for continued attachment to existence. There is another kind of intentionality that Richard was even pointing it to it. So after the Buddha obtained his full enlightenment, he decided on purpose to wander over India and to teach the Dhamma to people with the intention that he would continue doing that teaching until there were skillful and qualified bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, laymen and laywomen who were all had a proper understanding of these teachings and would be capable of understanding it, pointing it out, expressing it, and capable of realizing. And so the Buddha did that on purpose. So that was a sankhara, but it wasn't any kind of a formation that was directed towards any connection with seeking to take on or to keep or to hold on to a state of existence. And so that's the sankhara that stops. So it's not that causation stops completely, but that particular sankhara, the sankhara for existence, is the one that stops when the ignorance stops. And likewise, one can reflect and listening to teachings and come to a similar clear understanding about how the linkages work, each one of those linkages. I would say that at different times in our career as a Buddhist, in terms of our development, it may be that some portions of this path could become really significant, really meaningful, and really like drawing us to investigate and to study and to work with that. So, as for example, that whole process between the 6 sense bases, contact and feeling. That's a realm that's so fruitful and so beneficial to develop one's vipassana, and to having insight into really seeing and experientially knowing how that sequence goes, and seeing the danger and how it's possible for that to ignite the bonfire of craving, or how it's possible in different circumstances that instead of the bonfire of craving, that this particular cycle is happening, and the eye is just the eye, the object is just an object, the contact is just the contact, the Vedana is just the Vedana, just a feeling, and no bonfire has been lit. Each thing is able to just be its own thing without being a trigger that keeps that wheel of samsara rolling forward. That's an example of one corner of the cycle that many people find meaningful and useful to investigate. And at different times, different portions may be more meaningful or more useful to investigate. Okay, Maureen.
Yeah, I don't know whether you want to address this, but how did the Buddha teach about people who committed suicide?
There was the one occasion in which she had been teaching the asubha practice, the contemplating the unattractive aspect of the body. And then he went off on a personal retreat, and when he returned, he found that a lot of the monks were not there because they had become so disenchanted with having a body that they thought, what's the use of going on living? And many of them had committed suicide because they just didn't see the point of living after they saw that unattractive meditation. And the Buddha said, no, that's not what I meant. And he taught them the practice of loving kindness as an antidote, so they would not anymore make the mistake of doing harm to themselves. So in that sense, the Buddha didn't recommend suicide, and he tried to teach a different way. There's another famous sutta about a monk who committed suicide, and afterwards the Buddha said that he was afterwards Mara was looking for him after the suicide. Mara came and was just looking around, and they saw a shadow, and the monk said, "Oh, is that shadow the ghost of the monk who committed suicide?" And the Buddha said, "No, the shadow is Mara, who's trying to find that monk, but Mara can't find him because he's a fully enlightened arhat, and he's gone beyond the vision of Mara. And so then later the commentator struggled to know how a fully enlightened arahant would be able to kill themselves. And they do a kind of what could be a twisted logic. The commentators thought that he obtained his full awakening after he had cut open his belly, but before he died. But the Buddha was not, I don't recall hearing the Buddha giving like terrible condemnations to suicides, saying, they're so evil and they're going to go and suffer in hell for 84,000 aeons and like those kind of condemnations. But at the same time, he did tell us that we are specifically not allowed to counsel in favor of suicide. It would be a fatal mistake for us, for a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni, to counsel or advise somebody that they should commit suicide. So he was not in favor of suicide, but he wasn't cruel to persons who committed suicide.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oops.
Okay, I'll call on Maitri.
Thank you, Aye. Just a quick comment to tack on to what Maureen brought up. My understanding is that when we take on the first precept, the 5 precepts, if you keep in the 5 precepts, the first precept, Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami, which says, I will refrain from taking the life of any living being. That when we say any living being, that definitely includes oneself. And that if you take the life of yourself, that has consequences, that has karmic consequences, and you're breaking that 5th precept just right there. Now, for an arahant, there's differences there, but I think for all lay people, that this is my understanding. I wanted to just bring that up and maybe clarify.
Okay, I'm going to answer this. There is a wonderful sutta that's given to about karma, and the point is, if you think that if you remember that you killed, it doesn't mean that you're forever lost and destroyed and condemned to hell, and you have no opportunity for awakening and no opportunity for heaven. That's not how karma works, because every being through so many countless lifetimes in the past, they have killed at some point in the past. And so then nobody would be able to obtain heaven, nobody would be able to awaken if it was a permanent blot on a human that could never go away. And equally, if you make an excuse and say, well, I only killed once and that was a long time ago and I think I could just get away with it, that also is not accurate, not the right way of holding it, because even somebody who's a professional murderer, probably they don't spend 24 hours a day killing. They just, even if they just kill once a week or something, the average of the minutes that they have, they're not killing that much of the time. So what the Buddha says is, if you understand the Dhamma, and if you know that you have killed, you should recollect the Buddha has taught Panatipata Viramani. One should abstain from killing. With that knowledge, I undertake the determination from this moment forward to abstain and refrain from killing. So that's the correct choice.
Thank you, Ayya.
Okay, I'm going to call on Richard and Ravanti, and that will be the end of it. And I appreciate everyone's patience in going past the 2:30 time. Richard.
Thank you. As far as the monk that killed himself, he had a very horrible, painful disease, and he was, really struggling with the pain. And he said, he can't bear up. I think the Buddha himself went to see him, if I'm not mistaken. He said, I can't bear up under it. I'm really struggling to bear it. So it wasn't just some guy sitting around thinking, well, enough of this, let's go, or something. That number one. Number two, as far as the first precept is concerned, when Buddha elaborates on it and gives additional instruction, he says, one who goes around bloody-handed with a rod, a stick, sometimes it's called a club, but actually the word means like a rod, a danda, or a sharp object. Sometimes they say sword, it could be a knife or a hatchet, doesn't matter, it's like something. And they're going around and they're attacking other people. Yes, part of Buddha's thing is the middle way. We're not supposed to be self-torturing ourselves. But that particular monk, was already an extremely advanced monk, and obviously, Buddha said he was an arahant. So you're not like in some Judeo-Christian. I was born a Catholic, okay, and suicide is a completely horrible thing, and you can't be buried in the churchyard and everything. I think many forms of Christianity have that. In the hallowed ground, you can't be buried there and stuff like that. And Buddhism isn't like that. So I don't think we should take some of these things too far. You know what I mean? So some of the way we look at things in the modern world today is really a lot of influence from other types of religions and philosophies and everything. Anyways, that's all for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll call on Ravanti.
Thank you, Ayya. So my question is related to the sutta that we discussed today. So the link avijja paccaya sankhara. So and somewhat related to Smita's question as well. So when we say ignorance, is it referring to the anicca, dukkha, anatta nature of things? Is that my question?
Thank you. Seeing the three marks of existence and seeing the Four Noble Truths are both given as almost like the most frequent, common, universally taught signs of having the right view or having the right kind of understanding. I would say that maybe you can't really have one without the other, that if you understand the Four Noble Truths, you will also see those three marks of existence of anicca, anatta, and anicca, dukkha, and anatta, impermanence, suffering, and non-self. And if you see those three, it's very easy for you to see the Four Noble Truths. And if you really see them and obtain the path, obtain your stream entry, then meditation will be so natural and so easy to you that you will be able to easily go into jhana whenever you choose to do so. And then you'll have so many more opportunities for clear seeing and for developing a deep insight into the nature of things as they really are, both because of having a natural greater purity of your morality, of being much more capable of using the meditation to develop vipassana or insight, and that this and certainly a joyful life and a life which is motivated to continue cultivating the path right up to the final goal. So now I've tried to tie today's sutta in with the overall theme of our retreat this winter, practicing for stream entry.